Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Sunil. Welcome to the show. Let me just take a few minutes to first introduce Sunil Subramaniam. So, Sunil Subramaniam is the managing director at Sundaram Mutual. He joined the organization in 2005. What I'm really excited about in terms of discussing managing mutual funds in COVID is Sunil has not only seen his own company grow manifold, he's seen the entire industry grow manifold over the last 15 years across various functions. Sunil has been recognized by the Economic Times as one of the most promising business leaders of Asia in 2018 and 19. And under his leadership, Sundaram Mutual has won several accolades, including the Economic Times Best Brands Award in 2019. So, Sunil, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you, Adil. Thank you very much.
Uh, how are things going during these tough COVID times, Sunil? What has changed for you personally, and what has changed at the organization?
Well, I think that's one thing for both the organization personally is that we have become much more digital. So I think
Hmm.
digital was earlier an option. I think now it's a compulsion. So I think that's the biggest change that's happened. And not just, I'm not speaking for myself personally, but to all the employees, to all our distributor partners, to all our customers. I think the compulsion to go digital has been starkly there. And I've also been very happy to see the speed with which digital has been adopted. So we are seeing like 9 to 10x spike in our digital transactions. So that's a very welcome feature because I think in the long run, it has a phenomenal ability to save and rationalize costs and improve marketing reach. So I think that's a good part of the crisis. I think has been that it has actually given a dhaka to go digital. And I would say that's the single best, if at all I wanted to think of this crisis in any form a year from now, I'll think of life before and life after as the level of digitalization. And to me, it has been personally, I used to be a suitcase person living out of a suitcase. So for me, I have now covered 3x the number of people I would have covered in my normal roadshows in this period thanks to the webinar format. So I think it's improved our reach tremendously. It enabled us to stay in touch more regularly, and it's also been a two-way format. And I think this is one of those where the Q&A, whereas if you're in a physical meeting, getting all so many people in a room to do a Q&A, now it's become so much more easier. So knowledge dissemination among the investing community, I think has sharply gone up. So that's also fundamentally a very good feature for our industry.
Fantastic. I think I definitely resonate with that. So, very precise metrics. So, you said 9 to 10x growth in digital. That's mind blowing. I think it's something we see across digital industries, and obviously, everyone is trying to stay as safe as possible. We at Bank Bazaar are also working from home, and the entire human resource side, everything is digitized. So now let's dive into our show, Sunil. And the theme of the show, right, is managing mutual funds during COVID 19. So we have a lot of 30, 40-year-olds listening in. So my first question to you, right, is for a 30-year-old, how much of my income should I be saving every month? And should it all be in mutual funds?
So I would say that depending on your risk profile, right? I think even if you're a 30-year-old, you can't just straight away assume that everybody is on a high risk, can take long risk, right? So if you look at your temperament and judge that, and I would say basically just to do a two bucket, are you comfortable with taking a certain amount of losses for a short time in your long-term goal path? Or are you not? You want to be, you're very scared of that. So I would say that between 40 to 50% should be your savings. That is, i.e., you should limit your all your expenditure within 60 to 40% in terms of that thing. So I would say within savings. And the second question you asked was in terms of mutual funds versus this. So I would say that 75% of the savings should be in mutual funds regardless of which type, because mutual funds have the capacity to cater to your risk averse nature as well as your greedy nature, if I may put it that way. So I think 75% in MF and 25% across bank savings account, bank FDs, and private sector FDs. where you have both NBFC FDs and manufacturing company FDs. I think they all form a part of an asset allocation basket. For nobody should it be zero. So this in an MF you have equity and debt. So I'll roughly look at it saying that you should put 75% of your investment into MFs, and your equity debt ratio is again a dependence on your profile.
Got it. So I think that again is very clear numbers. Now you said save 40 to 50% of your net income. That's a great goal, and I wish everyone could do it. So I'm always personally pushing myself to at least put away 30% of my net income in my bank account into my SIP every month. So that makes sense. Secondly, you're saying what you put aside, whether it's 30, 40, 50, obviously aspire to 50, but 75% put it in MF, and the others, look at other instruments like bank deposits. Now, let's come to the question, and you alluded to it before. In that 75% MF saving, right, how much should be in equity, how much in debt? And you touched upon it briefly when you said about Horizon. Can you help us say, in what I do in MF, how do I split between equity and debt?
See, generally, if you look at a 30-year-old and his savings are essentially a postponement of consumption. I think conceptually, everybody should look at savings as not something that you're just throwing away and not being able to touch it, but essentially you're putting it away in order to consume more, better at a future point in time. So if you look at your entire savings as a postponement of consumption, I would say that 80% should be in equities and 20% in debt, right? Broadly as a ballpark rule.
Right. Okay.
At 30 years of age.
Got it. So you're saying for someone who's young, who's got a investment horizon, 80% should be in equity. That's what I also do, Sunil. Like you said, my savings are for long-term future expenses. Let's say my daughter's education, or something in terms of a down payment. So it's something I can wait for a long time. So I tend to put a bulk
Correct.
in equity. So the last question in terms of the 30-year-old and what to do, now that COVID has happened, right? All these metrics you told me, do they still hold good? So you told me save 30 to 50% or 50% if you can, put 75% in mutual fund, out of that 80% in equity. Now that once in a lifetime crisis, do all those metrics hold good or do they change?
Okay. So in order to answer this question, let me go back and look at my previous question, and I doubted it into this answer. So every investment, especially in mutual funds, right, should only be part of a financial plan. Okay, in which there are goals which you strive to achieve. Now, people could have different horizons, right? You could even have 1-year horizons for certain goals. You could have 10-year horizons. But every investment that you make, and I would actually argue that even if you're directly buying stocks, anything that you do, I would say that you should have a goal in mind. Either it could be a time-based goal, i.e. by 2030 or 2035, right? Or it could be an event-based goal, which could say that my son's future education or my holiday dream cruise in the Mediterranean, right? It could be an event-based, which means on your 10th wedding anniversary, you want to take your spouse on that. So it could be either time-based or event-based. And what I'm saying is that once you do the goal should always be quantified in rupees, annas and pies in your mind. Now, the situation in the world could change, that may not be adequate or it may be too much, but leave that aside. You have to have a basis to say, my Mediterranean cruise 10 years from now. And a ballpark to use, I would say, where you can never go wrong, I would say, is if you choose 7% as the rate at which the expenditure is going to inflate. If you assume 7%, the Indian economy over long term has done 7%. Very short period of time has it exceeded. By and large, now in the most recent past, it's been well less. I suggest that if you go with a particular time-based goal, you put in a certain cost today. You know the cost today for that, whatever, if you want to do it today. Assume a 7% inflation, just do a 1.07 multiplier for the next 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, whatever, and fix that amount as the goal of that particular investment. Okay, once you've done that, right? So the mix of debt and equity, if that goal is 10 years plus, for that goal, it should be 100% in equity. So I'm clarifying. If that goal is between 5 to 10 years, then you put 75 in equity, 25 in debt. And if the goal is 3 to 5 years, then you bring it to closer to 50-50, right? The reason being that equity markets over the long term definitely deliver the value, but over a shorter term, even up to 5 years, there is a higher risk element associated. So your goal shouldn't be at a risk of completely being destroyed because the market got stuck in a COVID kind of a situation, right? So this one basic rule set I'd like to give to people. And second thing, any goal that you set, 2 years before that actual goal time, if it's a time-based goal, move it 100% into debt, more particularly within debt MF into liquid MF. Because as you know from recent experience, right, that debt MFs have also sometimes given losses, sometimes got stuck and not being able to pull it out. Whereas in the liquid category, and there are 3 or 4 or 5 types of MFs in the debt category, which are in the liquid category. There is money funds, there is money market funds, there's overnight funds, and then there are ultra short term and low duration. So there are a lot of products available which are extremely low risk, which means it's a safe place to park money, and they are better than savings bank account, because when you say 2 years, that could become 3 years, then your taxation benefit makes that user extra additional little bit kicker in terms of your post-tax income, because ultimately you'll have to pay tax on it, whether it's a savings account or on a fixed deposit. So once you do this shifting to 100%, now what happens in COVID? There are 2 scenarios, roughly. One is that your actual goal is within the next 2 years. It could actually be at the time of COVID, or it could be in the next 2 years, right? In which case you're stuck, right? Your goals are very near. So then if you had done this cushion, that would have come to your aid, right? So I know that today you're already sunk. The past, probably nobody told you this. So you had actually put everything in equity 6 years ago in the hope that the equity markets would deliver that corpus and equity, and the COVID crisis came in the March correction, all those profits got wiped away. So there is that risk, which is where that cushion helps. So that's why I said any goal longer than 10 years, even today, even in a COVID crisis, you would have made money. So that's why I'm saying that's not an issue. The second thing here is that if the goals are still some time away, you are started 2 years ago with a 10-year goal in mind, so you still have 8 years to go. And now the COVID has happened. What you should do is actually to up the ante. You actually, whatever you're forming, SIP is probably the most common way. I would suggest that you actually double your SIP installment for the next 1 year, because COVID, being a very unnatural correction, has led to an artificial correction in the underlying fundamental value of these stocks, which are the underlying investments of an equity MF. So the actual thing I'm actually telling you is it's very similar to what is called as a barbell strategy, right? If your goals are very near, you move it into liquid assets. If the goals are far away, you actually double your equity component by doing that. So that's the way I would like people to look at the COVID impacting their portfolios.
Right. So I think these are 2 elegant concepts. I want to just repeat it so everyone is on the same page. So you're saying that if your goal is 10 years away, you're almost all in equity, because over 10 years, the market always does well. But as you get closer and closer to that end state, right, and that end state might be someone's education, might be a marriage, but once you hit 1 or 2 years away, you should be in debt, and ideally you should be in the safest form of debt. If someone had followed this advice, then this COVID downturn wouldn't have affected them that much, because they would have moved out of equity and they would have moved into debt and ideally liquid. So I think that concept is very interesting. The second concept which you said is very interesting, which I think is very relevant, is, let's say I'm planning for my daughter's education and I say that it will cost X lakh. Now today it costs X lakh, but you're saying apply a compound rate of 7%, because when my daughter is ready for that education 20 years from now, it is my imagination that it will cost X lakh. I should know how much rupees I need at that point in time. So if it costs X today, apply a 7% inflation rate to what it will cost when she needs to go to college. I think that's very, very interesting.
Yeah,
Let's move
can
to
I add just one
please.
point to this this
Yes,
whole thought process is that when you set those goals, and very often the markets go through bull rallies and then bear market phases, right? If that rupee amount of the goal has been reached ahead of your time, then ruthlessly cut your position, take that money and put it either in a liquid fund or in a bank savings account. Don't get greedy. So you said, let's say, like I said, you want to buy a Merc, and the Merc is going to cost you 1 crore, let's say. Okay. Now that crore happens 2 years before the time. don't get greedy and say, oh, it's already given me 1 crore. So I think actually I will get 1.5 crore if I wait more. And that's when a bear market or a COVID will come and destroy you. So discipline is not just in terms of systematically monthly putting money. Discipline is about, that's why I said, I suggest, and what I do for myself is I write down for every investment, I write in a piece of paper. This investment is for this, and this is my goal for it, and put it away. Whenever I look at it, if it has reached that goal, right, and actually I do it if it reached 80% of the goal, because I don't want that 80% gain, the last 20% to take away, but that's difference on individual people. But that goal is writing it down is critical, because then you know that the purpose of the investment has been served. Ruthlessly get out of that position and keep the money so that you can execute that goal. Either go and buy the car now, or you can keep it in the savings bank and buy it, because it might have been a gift, 10th wedding anniversary gift to your spouse. So you might actually want to wait for that time. So just one more addition to that whole goal-based process.
Right. So I'm actually hoping my spouse didn't hear that, but I'm not thinking of a Merc in the middle of COVID. But very important point. If I was thinking of a Merc, and let's say I'm able to hit that in my equity MF ruthlessly, right? Move that to a debt fund so that it's safe because I've hit my goal. Very nice, Sunil. I've never heard it someone say it so clearly. But when you hit your goal, move to a safer instrument. Very, very nice advice. Now, two rapid fire questions. There was a lot of talk when the problem with the Franklin Templeton debt mutual fund lockdown happened. Is everything past us, Sunil? So a lot of retail questions come at Bank Bazaar. We have 50 million registered customers. People want to know, is that in the past? Can we breathe easy now when it comes to debt MF? Can you help us understand this?
Sure. So there are three dimensions to this crisis. Okay. So the crisis arises because of credit risk taken by the fund manager, right? Now the three dimensions are that one is there was a credit risk taken in a credit risk fund. The name of the fund is credit risk. They took the credit risk. They were entitled to do that. The people who put their money in looked at that extra return. They were aware that it was a risky space and they entered it, right? So I don't think that they should complain, because that's the nature of the inherent in that fund, right? So credit risk funds can suffer these problems. So the first thing is, can this happen? Yes, there could be, because credit issues in a COVID time frame are yet to be fully realized, because the government has asked these moratoriums to be extended, and hence you're pushing the bucket down the road. You're kicking the ball down the road. When that ultimate date comes for payment, there are going to be companies, airlines, hotels, entertainment industries, all are going through crisis. So yes, in a credit risk fund, a credit risk taken can recur. I can't say that all the credit risk portfolios, all mutual funds are pakka clean and that this problem will not arise. It can very well arise, especially in NBFCs, because they in turn have lent their money to a weaker segment of society, which is the most importantly affected. So first, if you have invested in a credit risk fund, I suggest you pull it out, because you can't say which credit, though it may look good today, will turn bad tomorrow. One. Second thing is, the credit risks were taken in non-credit risk funds. Right? They were a low duration, ultra short term, which by the name of it was like real time liquidity fund, and there was credit risk there, and those funds got closed. Right? That issue is, again, I would say, is that you have to look at the portfolios. SEBI now has mandated 15-day portfolio disclosures. So do take a look at it, and it is now common knowledge as to which sectors are most affected. So if there are exposures to debt instruments in that portfolio, so you have to get out of those, because don't want to take a chance, because your alpha generation from debt funds does not compensate it for the alpha loss from debt funds, right? That's the second aspect. The third aspect of the crisis is the liquidity crisis. That is, the credits that Templeton took were not necessarily bad, but because there was a run on the fund, because people were pulling out money, they could not sell those in the short term. There was a liquidity issue. The credits are good, but nobody was willing to buy them today in this particular. Whereas if people had waited in the normal course, they had taken a paper which was falling due 6 months from now, a year from now, those companies would have paid it. But unfortunately, there is no trading in those papers, and the run caused a liquidity crisis. Now, that is something I think will not recur, because RBI has given a 50,000 crore line of credit to mutual funds to tide over. So I don't expect that a liquidity related issue will crop up. So, like I said, just to summarize, people should begin to look at the underlying portfolios of their debt mutual funds. One. Two, if they are in credit risk funds, this is not a time to remain in them. I would suggest move out. If in their non-credit risk funds also there are credits, right? Then I would suggest you move to another funds, or that same fund house would have different funds. Look at it where there is no such names. And finally, if it is a liquidity situation, I think that we are past that because the government has been proactive in getting the RBI to give a window for mutual funds to borrow to meet sudden redemption pressures. So I think that will not be any longer a issue as far as the risk is concerned. So I hope I have explained that.
Yes, yes. Thanks for giving us that three level analysis of how to think about it. So the next question, right? And again, the consumers in Bank Bazaar are fairly financially aware, right? Because they're tracking their credit score, seeing how it moves. They're trying to apply, do paperless, video KYC. So one question we keep getting asked, right? And no one better than you to help us think through it. How does one choose between a managed mutual fund and a index mutual fund? Which is the right one for consumers?
So let me explain a little bit. So managed funds attempt to deliver alpha, right? That's a now commonly used jargon. But people need to understand what is alpha. Alpha is defined as a higher gains and lesser losses. Both are alpha, right? And how does a managed fund achieve this? There are two steps in the process. One is they diversify. So they diversify your risk across a range of sectors, range of stocks. One. Two is they bring what is called as expertise in stock and sector selection. Right? Now, the key thing to remember here is that managed funds by nature look at delivering this alpha only over a longer period of time. Right? So essentially, if you look at the portfolios of most managed funds, they would have held the stocks, the positions for generally for a 4-year kind of a time frame. Now, why does this happen? Is because that's the general messaging, because a fund manager needs to have a view. And this is where the difference comes, is that this approach is called a fundamental approach. What is known as, let me say, economy first, within economy, sectors and industries, and then companies. The fundamental approach is to put a macro picture on how the economy, world economy, Indian economy look. Then you study it, and then you arrive at an individual company and try and see how this company is going to progress in the future. And based on that future, 3, 5, 6 years down the line, why is this approach taken? Because the alpha which I spoke about comes only from one fundamental factor, which is called information asymmetry. So what I mean by that is, I get to know something which others don't get to know. And when they get to know in the future, the price of that will go up. Now, in the US market, index funds have generally beaten managed funds because information is instantaneously available to all players in the market. So it's very hard to create that information asymmetry. But in India, because we are still not in that information age, you still take time to disseminate the knowledge that you can get by studying a company, meeting them is still valuable. Over the medium term, you end up delivering that alpha due to that information asymmetry, right? So then what happens? Why is it that index funds sometimes beat managed funds? So this generally happens over 3 occasions. So I just noted it down here. I'll just read it out for you. So first is when concentration prevails in the market. Mutual funds are inherently diversified instruments, right? But when like most recently, I mean, let me just take a name, Reliance and Infosys are the 2 stocks which have taken up the Nifty. Now, a mutual fund by regulation can't take more than 10%, whereas Reliance is today 14% of the Nifty. So try as I might, in a shorter time frame, when concentration is driving the market, mutual managed funds tend to underperform. So that's one. So, and second aspect there is that when technical factors prevail. What do I mean? I talked about fundamental where you do a study. Technical is when money chases stocks. Right? So what happens, and there are technical chartists who study this pattern of demand and supply and take bets. And their actual act of buying takes those stocks going up. So it's like a mass, it's like and everybody thinks that this is good. Even if it is not good, the price goes up and it goes up. So that's called a technical factor. So that's the second reason. And this excess liquidity value can come from across the borders or within our borders. So take for the currently both those forces are driving this market rally. Why I'm saying this is, in this short term bounce back, actually the average mutual fund hasn't beaten the benchmark. The reason for the same is because FIIs have been pumping money because there is surplus liquidity floating around the world, and for them, India looks a decent bet. And domestically, this whole digital revolution means that people working from home have lots more time, and so the volume of transactions by direct investment in the equity market. If I looked at the smaller digital distributors who are giving it away free, I don't want to name them, right? People know their names. They have doubled their customer base YOY. So what happens is that these are what are called Robinhood investors. They have time on hand, they have money on hand, just going and buying whatever is at a 52-week low or at a 104-week low. So that's just artificially, technically driving up the market. So in a shorter term time frame, this is a technical factor driving. The third thing which happens is there is when significant contribution of the flows in the market come from passive investors, like say a provident fund, like say a foreign ETF. The provident fund wants to put money in passive because the manager of the provident fund does not want to be questioned on why did you choose this mutual fund over the other one. So in order to just give a level playing, he just blindly puts it. So what happens is, in my fundamental analysis as a managed fund manager, this sector may look very bad. I'll say the outlook is very down. But because that stock happens to be in the index, the passive fund is buying that blindly. So its price is going up, and as somebody who believes that has no future in the next 1, 2, 3 years, I'm losing out. But I can't suspend my fundamental thinking just because those passives are flowing in at this point in time. So to summarize, and the fourth and final thing happens is when the economy is in a bear phase. So markets often are in a bull phase. Why does it happen? Because liquidity comes in. Central bankers pump in money to boost the economy. But the market doesn't follow what the Fed or the ECB wants him to do with the money. He takes and puts it where he gets the highest return. So in a bearish scenario, when this year India's GDP growth is going to be negative, in such a scenario, stock market is going up because excess liquidity is chasing. Now, a fund manager is coming from a fundamental approach to say the economy is not there, so let me not be in economy sensitive sectors, but those money that is coming in and rushing and take it away. So these are the 4 factors which cause index funds and ETFs to beat managed funds. And generally, all of this tends to die out within a short-term time frame. Whereas if you wait for 5 years plus, it is the fundamental factors which tend to dominate over these other technical factors, and mutual fund managers are able to deliver significant alpha. So if you look at it over a 5-year period today, thanks to COVID, large cap, mid cap, small cap, average funds have not beaten the benchmark. They are just at a benchmark. So 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, they're underperforming. But if you go from 6, 7, 8, at 10%, the average mid-cap mutual fund has delivered an alpha of 300 basis points per annum. And the average small-cap fund has delivered 450 basis points per annum. So if you had waited 10 years, all these 1 to 5 year loss easily gets covered, and you can imagine the compounding effect of a 300 basis points per annum on your returns. So my suggestion there is that if you're in a shorter term time frame and you're a person who is willing to take the risk and shift his asset allocation, then index funds can be of value to you on such moments. But keep track of these factors. That is the liquidity flows that's happening, those. If you keep your awareness of the market there, then in the shorter term, index funds can help you at times deliver. But the moment you're doing a goal-based longer term investment, then I would say that a managed fund has demonstrated the capacity to deliver superior value to help you achieve your goals in a faster time frame.
Great. So let me just summarize the data that you put out there, because I think that's really powerful takeaway for anyone listening. So what you said that is, if we now look at the last 5 years, that the index fund has done better than a lot of managed fund. But when we look at years 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the managed fund has done better than the index. So this is real data that one can look at historically. And the second thing, you gave detailed reasons why this could be happening, including the fact that there's a lot of liquidity which is going into index funds. So appreciate that explanation. Now moving to the last question, and this is actually the first point that you brought up. Now, you said that you've seen a 9 to 10x increase in Sundaram Mutual's digital sales. One very topical news is you have a any day SIP, which people are talking about, which you can tell us what and why it's important now. So my question to you, right, is I'm finding, and a Bank Bazaar survey showed that 78% of people don't want to meet anyone. They're saying that, boss, tell me how to do it digitally. If there is a help center, I'll talk to the help center, but please don't come to my house and meet me. Tell me, what is driving this 10x, and are you doing anything different, or is it happening automatically?
So what we are doing differently is we are reaching out to a larger and larger audience in terms of educating them about the market. So I've been doing these webinars, which are called E.M.I. So it reads as EMI. It's actually economy, markets, investments. And these are 1.5 hour sessions. And can you believe it that my first 3 sessions have got more than 100,000 people touching? So that, I think those people who come and it's a pure, I don't talk about my funds. I'm only trying to educate them about the economy, the trends and all of that. And I think a little bit of that is now coming back to say people, and with that understanding, are coming and doing digitally, number one. Number two is that I think I should thank our partners also, is that they have been driving digital in a big way in terms of their customer. And there again, we have been of help there, because when they go to a customer, now thanks to Zoom, I can directly talk to the partner's customer or a group of customers. And then immediately after that meeting is over, he can click digitally a digitally initiated transaction and quickly complete the transaction. So the lockdown has helped because the partner is telling the customer, sorry, sir, because of lockdown, I can't come. But here I'm able to get the MD of Sundaram to talk to you. This is a fund. Can you talk? And if he's convinced, a hot button immediately without having to then go to him next day. He might have forgotten what I spoke. I think that ease of transaction, that capability has again helped this spike in the volume. And third thing is, I think that by and large, the customers themselves have become more digitally savvy now. And I think a lot of new things like WhatsApp-based investing, all of those also will come and give this a further boost, which we are on the works on the anvil. So I think it's essentially been a two-way process.
Great, that sounds good. I think, like you said, educating people and also showing them that this kind of option is now available is critical to drive the digital skill up. So, Sunil, thanks for sharing your time. I think it becomes so clear that you love the what you do and the product. So, I think this has been very, very educative. Thank you for your valuable time.
Can I take a minute, give a final
course,
piece
yes.
of advice?
Yes,
Have
please.
time, Adil?
Of course, of course.
So basically on the COVID, I just wanted to tell people about these kind of crises, right? So the COVID is a black swan event. What is a black swan? Unpredictable, massive disruptor. But it's important to remember that the disruption is happened on the supply side, right? So there can be a supply side impact or a demand side. The nature of a crisis is important. So the supply side crisis means that when that crisis gets resolved, either through a vaccine cure or through that liquidity recovering, there's a V-shaped recovery. Whereas the demand side, you can put all the money you want, but people must be willing to spend. You have given them the ability to spend, but they may not go and spend. So such crises which are supply side have a V-shaped economic recovery, and the market tends to be ahead of that recovery. So why I'm saying this, I want to give a catchword here, that the fear caused by the pandemic is the right time to switch on your greed buttons. Right? Which I also alluded to by saying double your SIP installments for the next 1 year. Right? With that final bit of advice on COVID, right? I'll say goodbye. And
Thank
please,
you,
all of you,
Sunil.
stay safe. Right.
Thank you. Everyone stay safe, and please follow my LinkedIn page, and we'll have such fantastic educative conversations with industry leaders. Thank you. Thank you, Sunil.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.